Welcome back to another video. I've got a question. When you've got a full plate of food on the table in front of you, a hot, fresh meal, what do you think about? All the work that went into each individual ingredient and all the people involved? Or do you just think about how hungry you are? Or do you have any thoughts at all? Do you just eat? Me too. It's so easy to get food here in the West. Pretty much any food, any time of the year. The labor from farm to table is completely abstracted away. I don't even think about it. But what made me start thinking about my food, really tuning in, remembering all the stages of its evolution, has been my recent experience processing over 100 pounds of fresh, wild venison with Barron. It's one thing for me to buy meat from the store, or even to send Barron's wild game from last season off to a processor. But being involved in cutting meat from the bone, grinding it, packaging it, freezing it, and transporting it home, preserving the skull that carried the life that now nourishes mine, has given me a new look at my plate. The reality sinks in a lot deeper. In this video, we show you the final, more pristine elements of packaging wild game. YouTube is not a big fan of real life, so sorry, you won't get the full gritty experience here, though I'm sure some of you don't want to see that anyway. But I hope that after watching this video, you might be inspired to explore where your food comes from and how it's gotten to your table, and to be grateful for every last morsel.
Look at this little guy. Oh, dude, how cool is that? Okay, yeah, so some facts.
Texas tortoise, threatened, pet trade, easy to catch, as you just saw, and they eat like this.
These deer were all from a hunting trip I went on with Brad in Texas. He works as a wildlife biologist on a giant ranch down there, and he invited me along for a wildlife census to help thin the herd and to do some general maintenance. We flew in a helicopter for the first 2 days and counted all the wildlife we saw. Coyotes, hawks, owls, caracara, hogs, javelina, bucks, does, fawns, and more. I felt like Steve Irwin buzzing around and yelling out all the animals I saw as we flew by. This was my first time in a helicopter, so I was geeking. Brad flies the ranch in a chopper once a year to get a feel for how the wildlife population is doing. This is a low fence ranch, meaning wildlife can get in and out, but the cattle they raise cannot. As we flew, Brad took photos of the trophy deer on the ranch to keep track of the genetics and get an idea of where all the deer generally hang out.
What are you eating, dude?
Prickly pear.
How is it?
I'm sure it's really good.
We have no idea.
I have no idea.
We don't know how it
It
tastes.
could be really bitter, it could be really sweet, it could be really sour. It felt warm on my tongue from sitting in the sun.
Yeah, me too.
That's all I got. We hunted from blinds, which makes the experience more of a harvest than a hunt. After experiencing spot and stalk hunts, it was interesting to see how different the style of hunting is. We spent a lot of time in the blinds observing and photographing wildlife, selecting certain older deer to pull from the gene pool to keep the genetics strong. Since mountain lions are exceedingly rare in this part of Texas, the only predators deer have are people and coyotes. Brad and I came home with 3 deer, 2 does and a buck. I really appreciate Brad giving me this opportunity, especially since I didn't get a chance to hunt big game this year, being so busy with the house build. In the field, Brad and I quartered and cleaned the meat off the carcass where we harvested the deer, then back at home cut the meat from the bones. Elsa and I split a heavy-duty meat grinder with Brad and happened to be house sitting for them during this process. We first stuck large chunks into the grinder and, per the advice of James, passed the meat through the grinder twice. I'm far less squeamish than I guess I thought I would be.
Yeah, well, you already did the hardest part.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was oddly satisfying and didn't make us feel squeamish at all. We had fun and felt proud to be processing our own meat for the first time. Lindy had some grass-fed beef fat that we added to some of the less fatty sections of meat. We spent about 5 hours at this and ended up with around 100 pounds of ground venison. In addition to ground meat, we've also got a bunch of backstrap roasts and tenderloins.
We've got a bunch of stuff pulled out of the freezer right now. We still have quite a few of last year's stew meats.
This year we just ground it all.
So we have no roasts, or we do have backstraps and tenderloins though.
Yeah, because we found that ground was just easier to use. You want to trade since I have longer arms?
You like it? Mm-hmm. Are you proud of yourself?
Yeah. I think it's really cool that we did this like the whole way this time. I chose to make this buck skull into a Euro mount by myself instead of paying to have it done. This is the first buck I've killed, having only had deer tags last year, which was my first year hunting. First, I soaked the skull in hot soapy water to loosen the oils and excess flesh, which it had a lot of because it had sat around for a couple months before I had the chance to do this and it dried out a lot. After soaking for 4 hours, I spent several more hours scraping and pulling the leftover meat from the bone. Still pretty gnarly. The next step was the whitening process. I covered the base of the antlers with plastic wrap and electrical tape to keep their natural color intact. I soaked this in a mix of hydrogen peroxide and water for 45 minutes, scrubbing it with a wire brush here and there. Before getting into hunting, I recoiled at the idea of keeping trophies to commemorate kills. The idea seemed to trivialize the seriousness of taking a life. I understand now that the trophy serves to honor the animal, for me and all the hunters I've talked to at least. It's awesome to relive the story of the hunt and to keep the animal alive in memory. Something interesting to consider is the biggest antlers generally are found on the oldest animals. These big old males have passed their genetics down through generations and are likely on the tail end of their life. Though morbid, a bullet generally delivers a more humane death than those suffered without human intervention, with animals being eaten, falling ill, starving, or dying of thirst. It also feels good to look at the skull as we eat our nourishing meals. It helps to appreciate the realities of life. Without just drilling into it, I think that's about as solid as we can make it.
Cool.
That looks sweet. It's kind of funny that it's a white-tailed deer in muley country, but there are whitetails around here near the river, I guess.
Why are we putting it in the A-frame?
I figured, well, I don't know, we were talking about it, and it seems like since this is the stage that we're in right now, when we got our first buck, it's kind of cool that it goes in the A-frame and kind of stays with the A-frame. In our house, whatever animals we get then, it'll kind of like tell that story. Because that's the idea with this, like that's what makes it so cool, is anytime you see it, it like rekindles that whole story and experience and the animal and everything else. It's kind of extra, but
So extra.
yeah, but I don't know, it's easy enough to pull down if we want.
I'm proud of you. I think it's cool. I'm happy to have it in here.
Cool.
Thank you so much for watching today's video. We will see you in the next one.
It's so extra.